My social media and my blog was born out of encouraging families to get out there and still do the things that make them happy as parents, even once they're a family.
Are you an RV person? Or are you just RV life curious, wondering how people live in a tiny space with their family 24/7? Either way, this is a podcast for you. My name is Kate White, and I travel full-time with my family and 2 kids and the dog in an RV. Every week, I sit down either with a fellow RV woman to discuss why she chose RV life and how she has changed on the road, or with a special guest who speaks on a topic relevant to travel life. Pull a chair up to the fire and let's chat. Kate O'Phelan, welcome to the RV Queens podcast. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
Oh my gosh, so good. Where are you guys right now? Are you boondocking somewhere magical?
We're boondocking in southern Utah. We are outside of Kanab. We just spent yesterday in Bryce Canyon. It was wonderful.
Woohoo! Man, okay, I have questions coming up later about boondocking because we are not experienced boondockers at all. So I got to pick your brain about a few things. I'm super excited to chat with you today and really dive into your story. And I always like to start back before RV life. Please, if you will, paint a picture of what your life looked like back when you guys lived in New York City and you and your husband were, quote unquote, professional theater people.
We lived for 10 years in New York City. I was a professional actor. My husband was a professional casting director. We lived, sort of a glamorous city life. I was like a Tony voter and on the board of my actor union. First, we lived in Manhattan. Then we lived in this very cute little Brooklyn neighborhood that I like to describe as Sesame Street. Like, it really was adorable. But we didn't even own a car for 10 years. Like, we walked everywhere. We took the subway. And so I feel like the transformation from city people to people who are off-grid camping in the middle of Utah is like pretty drastic. I think it's just hilarious. Our 10 years ago selves would think this was absolutely hilarious. We had our first and second kids, and we started to think about maybe moving out of the city. I went back to grad school. I got my master's in public administration. And then I graduated on Zoom in 2020. And as we all know, 2020 changed so much for so many of us. My husband's work went remote. My daughter's kindergarten that I had worked so hard to get her into went remote. And I was like, why are we sitting in the city paying a ton of money in rent when we can't go anywhere? None of the things that we needed to be here for are open. All of the places that we used as our living room as New Yorkers, like the public park, the playgrounds, the libraries, the museums, all of those places that we used to get out of our small space living were closed. And it got very claustrophobic very quickly. I was pregnant with our third, and we decided, hey, our lease is up. Why don't we put all our stuff in storage for the summer? And we'll go rent a couple of Airbnbs for the summer, spend some time outside, get some sunshine, and we'll come back in the fall in time for school. We started this journey, and we spent a lot of the summer on the coast in Maine, just having an absolute blast, and my husband working remotely on the deck in the sunshine, and we were like, why are we going back to New York again? Exactly. And then after that, I was like, I really love this traveling lifestyle. I feel like our family is getting so much out of it. However, I miss having our own space. And so I finally was able to talk my husband into buying an RV and learning how to drive a giant truck and tow something. We didn't want to have an RV payment, so we bought what we could afford in cash. We bought a 2007 Keystone Raptor, and she was ugly. She was real ugly. We like to call her grandma hunting cabin chic.
Oh, yeah. It's probably very dark on the inside.
Oh, gosh. It was like hunter green florals everywhere.
Yeah, yes.
Like, it wasn't trendy in 2007 either.
Right. Yeah.
So intimidated at first. I felt like I needed like anti-anxiety medications the first few times. And now I feel so comfortable with it. Like, I took it all the way to Alaska and back last year. I backed it onto a ferry. Like, I can't, my city self just cannot believe where we are right now.
Okay, just hang on. You just gave me like 10 years worth of information, and I have so many questions. So let's start when you were a professional actor. And then like, what made you make a career change? And how did you decide what direction to go? Was it kids that came onto the scene?
I loved what I did. I loved being a professional actor. I had a really traumatic birth with my first, and actually developed diagnosable PTSD symptoms from it. And that was sort of a game changer for me. I ended up feeling like what I was doing was meaningless, which is not the case at all. I think storytellers are incredibly important. But at the time, my traumatized self was like, I can't have let this been for nothing. And I had already sort of been moving in a direction of what I like to call being like a world changer kind of person. It's always been a core value to me to leave the world better than I found it. I was already on the board of my union and doing work there, even as an actor. So it sort of was like an inciting incident, but it was lighting a flame that had already been sort of kindled before. And so I went and got this public administration degree. And that was also an incredible experience. But what I learned through getting that degree was work that I had been doing before. I was integrating. Being an actor, being a speaker, my day job had always been social media consulting. So incorporating that too, I found that one of the things that I was really good at in my public administration program was taking these really complex public service sort of ideas and synthesizing them into graphics and presentations and short videos. I love doing that, is taking complex ideas and turning them into digestible small bites for people. One of the things that I found happening to myself when I became a mother, and I think is a really common experience for people, is that when we have children, especially small children, we are sort of relegated to the home space. For me, I felt a lot of pushback for myself about being, no longer welcome in public spaces with small children who were noisy and sometimes cranky and need, all the things. And I feel like, as I discovered the fact that actually with 3 small children, we can still travel, chase our dreams, take up space in national parks and on hikes where people sometimes don't expect us to be. We get a lot of times people are like, oh my goodness, you're doing this hike with 3 children. Wow. I feel like as I learned more about how we are still able to take up space in public as a family with small children, that I wanted to help encourage people to be able to do that more. And so that's where O'Phelan Adventures, my social media and my blog, was born out of encouraging families to get out there and still do the things that make them happy as parents, even once they're a family. And to me, that really is a gender equity issue, because when people, especially mothers, are afraid to be in public, we just lose a big part of ourselves.
I don't think I had quite as traumatic, of like a first birthing experience with my oldest, but I was in labor for literally over 50 hours. And it was, not going to share my whole birth story here, but it was a lot. And becoming a mom, like I was like on this design career trajectory. I was like, yeah, I'm just going to like pop this baby out. Cool. Take some maternity leave, get back to my career. You know how it is. It's like, screech, like life. What just happened? Wow. The world is super unfair right now for moms, especially in America. And like what? Like mama bear, this is not how all of our little mama bears around here should be treated. And it, like, I for several years, like was very active kind of in the same space about working mothers, especially like returning to work and all those kind of policies and stuff. So I get it. Like I can connect with you totally on that level. And then like seeing how you've taken that and turned like your travel life into like, and also you can still live your dreams, moms. It's so beautiful. And I love that you've just like let that fire just keep growing in you. So, whew, I love it. Okay. So also going back to the story, you guys, you were living in the city in a super cute little street in Brooklyn. COVID hits. You and your husband start working remotely, and then all of a sudden you have 2 kids, and you were pregnant at the time, right? Did I get that right? And you're like, okay, we got to get out of here and go on vacation. You go to Maine and live for the summer. Like, what happened where you guys were like, well, why don't we just start Airbnb? Like, why? Tell me about that. Like, how did you just make that switch to be like, and we're going to travel full time?
One of my favorite things about my husband is that I have zany ideas and he goes, okay. And we've been together for almost 20 years and it has always been that way. And so I feel like I'm the ideas person and he's like the lieutenant who's like, yeah, let's get her done. And I just really appreciate that about him, that he's like full of optimism, willing to go there with me. And I feel like it wasn't even a hard push for me to be like, we should just do this all the time. As far as what made us do it, I feel like we had already been sort of thinking about how we were feeling priced out of Brooklyn. We did love our life there, and I don't want to discount that. Like, we do still miss it. I loved our neighbors and it had this small town community feel in Brooklyn. We had an amazing life there, but it was very hard during early COVID. New Yorkers rely so much on public space like we do as RVers. And when that all shut down, I swear we didn't see sunlight for like a month. Like we had nowhere to go outside. And that does a number on your mental health, especially when you are pregnant and sick. It was sort of an easy transition because we had already put all of our stuff into storage. We got this giant storage unit and I couldn't stop throwing up. So my husband just packed all of the boxes haphazardly. Like, I am always the packer. I'm super organized and I couldn't get off the couch. So he just literally threw stuff in boxes, bless his heart, put it all in this like giant storage unit. And we left and rented a couple of Airbnbs monthly. And so it wasn't too much of a stretch to be like, oh, we'll just keep doing this for a bit longer. And we went and spent some time with family in Alabama to actually have the baby because I was still pregnant. And we wanted some support for that. And then we were like, let's go see some national parks. Let's go hike. Let's go do this for a little bit. And that has slowly, I feel like we check in every 6 to 12 months and be like, are we still liking this? Is this still fun? People ask us all the time, how long are you going to do this? And our answer has always been, well, until it's not fun anymore. We don't, but I feel like for the first time in our adult lives, we don't really have a 5-year plan. We're like just doing it until it's not fun. But the only thing that I was really missing was like my own bedding and all of our like homeschool stuff, and the kids wanted their 150 stuffed animals and things that were hard to take with us in a CRV. And so that's what sort of led us into the RV life and learning how to tow and be off grid and all these things that were like such a steep learning curve.
So you're bopping around to Airbnbs, you decide to start RV life. Is it because you were inspired by families that you saw online, or were you just inspiration? Boom, let's just travel in an RV.
I have been following the Mom Trotter for many years, like since she bought her original RV. What was that, like 6 years ago? It's been a long time. So we were definitely still living in Brooklyn. And at that point, it was aspirational for sure. I was absolutely not at all convinced we would ever get to do it. And I sort of pictured it as a like, maybe when the kids are out of the house sort of thing. As we discovered full-time travel and realized that there are a lot of families out there doing this, I was like, oh, this could be us for sure. In a lot of the parks that we found at first, there weren't a ton of kids. It is a very retirement heavy community. And until we sort of locked into those online communities and found our people, I think we would have felt like real weirdos if it weren't for social media. So I have always thought for many years that social media is a gift in that way, that you are able to connect to really niche interests and find really cool people that way.
I feel the same way. When we started out for about 3 months, it was just like, retired people. And we were in beautiful places, but there was a point that I'm like, yeah, my kids need to meet some other kids. It was amazing. Well, it's just like, you just show up and everyone's like, yep, we're doing this too. And bing. I mean, it's like kids are like magnetically just like, we're friends. It's the best.
It's really cool. My kids will watch out the window when people pull in and be like, they have kid bikes on the back of their RV.
Okay, so when you guys decided to renovate your 2007 Raptor with the dark florals and stuff, was this just like you guys looking at YouTube and figuring it out, or how in the world did you know what you were doing?
We did have some experience because we were theater people. We had to spend time in the shop in college. We knew our way around some power tools to start, although we didn't own many. And then, I joke that YouTube University helped me learn how to renovate in here because it is a different beast from renovating a house or building a theater set. There are a lot of specific concerns to renovating an RV. And I have blogged a lot about what I've learned throughout renovating because there is just no other thing exactly like renovating an RV. And it took me 4 months and a lot of late nights reading and researching and watching videos. And now I can imagine, like, were I to do it again, it could be so much faster. I share everything as much as I can on Instagram and on my blog because I hope that it is accessible as possible to people to learn this, because it isn't that hard. It's just a lot of work.
Well, kind of like all of RV life. It's not that hard once you know what, like, the basics.
Sometimes I swear I'm like, I could have figured that out if I even knew I was missing that question. Like, I like to joke when we first got our truck, I did not know that you had to turn the dial to put it in 4-wheel drive. Like, I did not know that, and I didn't even know I should know that. So we were like stuck in the mud at our Airbnb where we were renovating, and our neighbor came out to help us, and he was like, well, you have it in 4-wheel drive? And I was like, do you have to turn that on?
We were going to be driving through the mountains for the first time, and my husband does the driving right now. He's the only one on the insurance, so, it's like he's got to do it. We didn't even know there were like little camper brakes where you can, honestly, I don't even know how it works, but you, like, if you're worried about your truck brakes burning out when you're driving up and down a mountain, maybe just down, I don't know, you can like squeeze the I'm like, oh, this is a thing. We're 9 months into RVing. We've been hauling this thing around. Good to know.
Yeah, I keep wondering how many years we will be RVing full time before we stop having those moments.
So true. So what was the most surprising part of the renovation for you?
Well, I can say the most unpleasant surprise that to anyone who's owned an RV for a long time is probably not that surprising, is that we found water damage when we started ripping things out that was not evident when we bought it. Even the inspector we hired missed it, which is sort of frustrating. In the bedroom slide, the corners of the slide were starting to rot out, and we couldn't see that until we pulled the nasty carpet out. And I left that for the end of the renovation because I was so overwhelmed by having to deal with it. I was like, I wonder if I can just patch it. I wonder if I can, went through a million different scenarios. And finally I got in there and I was like, this is not salvageable. I'm going to have to rip all this out. I don't have a forklift handy. So how do people do this without a forklift? And I actually made a reel about it because it was hard. I'm not going to lie. It was not my favorite 3 days of my life, but it is actually achievable. Like, it's not, I feel like people absolutely panic online when there's slide floor damage. And I get it because it's not fun to deal with, but it is actually fixable. It took me and my husband and my father-in-law 2.5 days of like, we, undid everything on the slide mechanism. We had the slide edges propped up with jacks and lumber. My father-in-law's like holding the slide in from the inside. That was his main job, was holding it, while my husband and I are like pulling out the rotted slide floor, measuring for the new piece, sliding in the new piece. The hardest part was trying to get everything to like line up underneath the bed correctly to get it screwed back in. But it really, like, for people who I would say are moderately handy, it is achievable.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask about the cabinets specifically, because your cabinets are like this really cute color of green. And we just have the basic, whatever the RV came with color right now. And I always think, oh man, it would be so much cuter if I painted them. But do I want to do all that work? Is it actually as hard and tedious as it seems?
I would say it's not hard. it is tedious. It is incredibly tedious. And I feel like that's a thing about RV renovation that people, myself, underestimate, is that because you think it's such a small space, you're like, oh, well, it can't take as long as doing a house. But I actually feel like working in really small spaces is just really slow. So I'm up there like on a step ladder trying to paint in the back of my top cabinets. Multiple, you gotta sand it, you gotta prime it. I put 2 coats of paint on. Like, I spent a lot of time with my hands in the back corner of cabinets. That's one of the things I would recommend. I absolutely think it was worth it. And I think that about everything I did. We did the outside too, which was also incredibly tedious. Mostly just taking off the sun baked on decals.
How do you get those
probably
off?
40
because
hours.
You guys painted the outside of yours like this super cute little like boho scene. And I'm like, how in the world do they do that? It's amazing.
2 options, essentially. One is that you buy one of these like decal remover wheels that you use. And we did do that for some of the ones that were in better shape. The decal remover wheel, we used 3 of them and they were like, I don't know, $15 each. And they just like spin, spin, spin and take some of the ones that are in better shape off. And then the other option is to heat them up with, I was using my hairdryer because that's what I had handy, or a heat gun, out there on a 15-foot ladder with my hairdryer, like heating it up so that it melts and then slowly peeling it off.
Not to mention you have like 3 kids on top of all this. So it's like, I'm like physically getting like anxiety thinking about the tedious tasks plus like kids around and just, wow, you must have the patience of Mother Teresa because it's a lot.
I can hear my husband laughing as he listens to this podcast. My youngest was still under a year when we took on the RV renovation. And I do think also that was part of what made it slow, is that I did almost all of it by myself because my husband was either working or I thought like, oh, at night after he puts the baby down, he'll come and help me. And then we had a 1-year-old that still wasn't sleeping through the night. So mostly I did it by myself, although I did have some family come and help me, which was amazing. But it would be a lot easier now that my youngest is 3 and a little bit more self-sufficient.
Okay. I mean, I cannot say how much respect I have for you right now because I'm not sure I would take that on. So props to you. Let's get into travel planning. You seem really good at finding these like off the beaten path type gems with travel. Particularly impressed by that because when I try to do that, I feel like it's like 2/3 of the time it ends up being lame. And it's like me and the kids being on like, hey kids, I found this ferry ride. It's going to be super cool. And we get there, it's like nasty. And like my 9-year-old daughter's like, yeah, mom, there's a reason this is free, And I'm like, well, that was a fail. Like that happens to me a lot. Okay. So like, what are your secrets?
Those preteens will roast
so
you.
Hardcore. What are your secrets to planning cool itineraries?
I feel like it's sort of a gift I've developed from experience, like 4 years of travel, right? Like the first year and a half that we went around the country, we did do mostly the things that everyone does because it's the stuff everyone does. It's the bucket list stuff we had wanted to do for a long time. And it's more accessible and there's nothing wrong with it. That is a great place to start. And if that's what you really want to do, you should do that. But I do feel like after some point, some amount of traveling, you're like, okay, but like, how do we see the other stuff? And for me, I feel like it's a combination of being like just a really good researcher. And some of that looks like spending a lot of time looking at hashtags on Instagram, zooming in and zooming out on my Google Maps. It's amazing what will like pop up or disappear depending on how zoomed in you are. And I'll search attractions on my Google Maps and then like zoom in or zoom out multiple times, see what I haven't checked out in that area before. I also feel like I follow a lot of really inspirational people now, and if I see something anywhere in the entire world that I might ever want to visit, I save it for later. I have a very complex Google Maps system where I use the stars on my Google Maps for things that I might want to see anytime in my life. I use the hearts for things that we will maybe want to see in a location that we're visiting within the next 3 to 4 months. So it's like sort of my like short-term list. And then there are flags too on your Google Maps. I use the flags. I'll go through, we have a couple of museum memberships that give us reciprocity. So I will go through and research all of the ASTC or NARM or AZA or whatever like museum membership reciprocity program that you might be a part of in the states that we're about to hit, and I will flag those. So I use that Google Maps feature really heavily. I have stars all over the world for things that I saw on Instagram one time that I might like to visit someday. And then hearts for things that I think we might get to in the next few months. Make custom lists on Google Maps as well. I have a custom list for boondocking spots that I've seen people at or seen them recommend. So I save those all over the country as they crop up too. I feel like being flexible with saving things that you might someday want to see, even if you don't have a plan immediately, is really helpful. So for me, the Google Maps system works really well. Other people might use other apps or might use bookmarks in their browser, but I like that. Now, because I've been doing this for a while, I can look at any area of the map anywhere in the world and be like, oh, these are things I saw someone do, or these are things someone recommended, and this place looks amazing. And it helps me plan our route, because I will literally look like, oh, here's a cluster of stars, let's go this way. And like, here's a cool boondocking spot that I saw someone camp in 2 years ago. Like, let's go hit that.
I wish I was more like you. We sit down to travel plan and I'm like, I like want to pull my eyes out. It's like, I just want to like pay someone like you to be like, can you just do this for me?
I actually really do. I guess that does make me weird. I really do like the planning part, and I have since before we were travelers. When we would have 2 weeks off and we would go fly abroad, I would spend 6 months planning that trip, me with my like highlighted Lonely Planet back in the day. I do enjoy that aspect for sure. But the like logistics are a lot of work, and I think anyone who's responsible for that in their family will appreciate that. But I do feel like boondocking makes the logistics a lot easier.
Yeah, I was just about to ask that. Like, how did you guys equipped your rig with, solar panels and all the stuff a while ago? Like, how did that affect your travel planning?
The first year that we were in the RV, we were super overwhelmed. Really just trying to figure out things like how do we hook up the water and how do we hitch up our truck and like that kind of stuff. We had a lot to learn. And so we did do almost entirely like park to park RV parks. Occasionally we would do an overnight at a Harvest Host, but for the most part we were like RV parks all the way. And then we went to Alaska last summer, and I could not believe the places that you could boondock. Like my mind was absolutely blown when we got out there. Like, you can just park in this parking lot and I can sit on my couch and look at a glacier. Like, what? And the parks up in Alaska are really expensive, I will say. They are, I don't know, I want to say like 10 to 20% more expensive for similar parks than you would find in the lower 48. And they book up really fast because they have a very short season. And so we got out there and we had parks booked, but I was like, I think we need to put some solar panels on and figure this out, because my goodness, I don't want to leave this spot. And we only have one tiny battery and our fridge keeps dying overnight. So let's figure this out. So we hired solar installers up there. I was planning to DIY it, but when I got to the Renogy checkout with all of my items in the cart, discovered that shipping to Alaska was going to be $2,000. So I was like, well, for that, I'll just hire someone to put the panels on. So we did that. We spent $4,000 and outfitted our rig with like sort of what I felt like was the bare minimum for continuous being off-grid. We do not have a very fancy system. And that's a thing that I feel like I'm always shouting from the rooftops to people about boondocking, because before we got into it, I felt like really intimidated, because a lot of people I see online are like, oh, you need a $10,000, $15,000 setup to be off-grid. I don't see us investing that kind of money into a rig this old, so maybe not. But discovered, like, with some thoughtful, planning and some careful energy usage, like 800 watts on the roof of solar is what we have, and 520 amp hours of battery, and we have a 1,000 watt inverter. Like, it's small. But it's plenty for us. Like we're not running air conditioners and we're not running air fryers. But other than that, like we're comfortable off grid indefinitely.
Let's touch on your summer in Alaska real quick. You traveled there with 3 kids. What? You even wrote a travel guide about this. That is amazing.
I did.
Yes. What do you think RV people should know about traveling to Alaska?
So I wrote it's like 23 pages about RVing Alaska, because it's another area where I feel like I was talking at the beginning of this podcast, I feel like I'm really good at taking something that feels really overwhelming and intimidating and turning it into something that's like, oh, that's not so bad. I can do that. And Alaska is one of those things where I feel like people are like, oh my gosh, I could never go to Alaska with my RV. And I'm like, actually, though, you can. You really can. If I, who didn't know 2 years ago that my truck had to be turned into 4-wheel drive, can do it, you can too. I feel like there's a lot to know about Alaska, and so that's why I wrote a whole ebook. But the things that I would say right off the top, it's far. It is really far. There is no sugarcoating that. It is far, and then it's still farther than you think it is. Like it's a very long drive. We slowly made our way from Alabama to Calgary, which is sort of like where we launched the section of what I would call is like our Alaska trip. And from Calgary, it's like 3 days of towing up to Dawson Creek, which is the start of the Alaska Highway. And it took us 8 days to get from Dawson Creek to Tok, Alaska, which is the very beginning of Alaska, and there's not really much in Tok, so you're still not really where you want to go. So it's far. It's very, very far. I feel like every time I talk to people about going to Alaska, I'm like, the biggest thing you just need to know is like, it is a lot of driving.
And that's why I'm so impressed that you went with 3 kids. Because I'm like, yeah, maybe if it was me and my husband, like I could see us getting in a mode that's like, all right, it's going to take like 2 weeks to get there. Let's do this. But when you're traveling with kids, it's like a whole other, like, the kids are in the truck for like 2 weeks.
Incidentally, the kids are coming with you.
What? They're still there.
We have the advantage of like our kids have been training for this. We joke like they are good travelers at this point. But we limit our drive days. We try to limit it to like 5 hours by Google Maps, which as any RVer will tell you is not actually 5 hours, especially on the Alaska Highway where it's like, 2-lane highway through a lot of mountains, it goes through the Rockies. I feel like with careful planning, and I do have a blog post up on my blog all about everywhere that we stopped all the way up. There is enough to do on the way that it didn't feel, it was a lot of driving, but we stopped and did really cool stuff on the way. We stopped at an amazing hot springs for one night. We saw, grizzly bears munching on flowers alongside the road and, herd of bison. And we drove through unbelievable scenery. There's a really gorgeous lake and like there's enough on the way to stop and do and rest and see. We took a break in Whitehorse, which is the capital of Yukon. We took a break for 3 days and did a little bit of sightseeing there, took a break, replaced all of our truck tires because the road is, it's not great. I feel like I am of a mind. Some people I feel like are overly concerned about the condition of the road. It's not worse than like a rough county 2-lane highway down here. It's just that it's really, really long. And so people might be tempted to go faster than they should be going. And so it can be rough on your rig. We did break a leaf spring. We had to replace all of the tires on our truck and trailer by the time we made it back from Alaska.
You've got a travel blog. Your Instagram is amazing. Your photography is beautiful. You've been featured, in Apartment Therapy and Tiny House Blog and all these different places online. So like you seem really good at this and you know what you're doing. How did you learn this? How did you learn all this?
I have been doing some form of content creation since like blogs became a thing, like a long time. I applied to and was accepted to blog about my wedding at weddingbee.com, which was this, I don't know if you remember, it doesn't really exist anymore in the same way, but it was like all the rage back in 2009 when we got married. It had a huge audience. And so I feel like I got my feet wet doing that work, like learning how to write for large audiences, learning how to improve my photography. I then ended up doing a lot of consulting for years. I have ghostwritten for Forbes. I have helped, CEOs and nonprofits run their socials. I still do some social media consulting for nonprofits now. So I've been doing that part for a really long time. And how you learn social media is by putting something out there and trying it. Like I think there's no other good way to learn other than find a really great mentor, which I also had. But social media is like a giant online sandbox. Like you get to just put stuff out there and see how it does and read the metrics and be like, oh, people really were interested in this thing I did, or, oh, like this was not so, people were not resonating with this for whatever reason, and tweak it and test it. And I have been doing that for a long time. As far as like creating videos and photos and improving that, that's also just practice. We're in southern Utah now, and we're revisiting some hikes that we did 3 years ago. Like yesterday, we were in Bryce Canyon. And so we were comparing our photos from 3 years ago, and we were like, wow, we've come a long way. Like I'm really proud of us. We were looking at photos that were like, yeah, they're really cute and sweet, but I just feel like our skills have really developed. And that's just from literally taking 30,000 photos over the past 4 years. Like we just do it all the time. And I don't know that there's an easy shortcut to that. I wish there was, because nobody has a personality more than me that wants to be like, I want to be good at this immediately. My husband's always teasing me for this. Like, why do you think you should be good at this thing you've never done before? But some of it is just like years and years of practice and starting now. And I do feel like one of the things that I'm really proud of about myself is that I will try things scared, like towing an RV. Like, I was like, okay, I'm towing this 55 feet of truck and trailer, even though I'm absolutely terrified. And you just do it scared, and very quickly you get a lot better.
I love that advice so much, and I can totally relate with, I don't know what it is about me. I remember when me and my husband were first married, learning to cook. Like I would get so mad at myself for like starting a recipe and completely burning the crap out of whatever it was and like getting a tizzy in. And my husband's like, you've never done this before. I'm like, but I should be perfect at it. I'm totally the same way. Even today, I'm like, I don't know. What is that?
I know.
Is that
I don't know. My husband does the same thing.
Yeah.
He looks at me like, why would you expect to be good at this? And I'm like, I don't know, because I should be.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Another podcast will dive into the psychosis of American women and put that on the shelf because I have a couple more questions. Okay. Like most listeners of this podcast and the majority of, RV queens in the community, you are living this kind of nonstop life between being a mom and a wife, homeschooling, travel planning, creating content, making money. We got a lot going on here. What's your secret to living a life that like integrates personal life and business, like just so constantly?
I have to just accept that balance is not going to happen all the time. And to be really flexible about like, for this couple of weeks, we're focusing on this thing. And for this couple of weeks, we're going to set this down for a bit and focus on something else. It's actually not possible for me to integrate everything that I want to do every day. And that's another thing that I really struggle with, being like, I should be able to do all of these things every day. It's not possible. It's just not all going to fit. But I do feel like I do a relatively good job of being like, I really want to get this ebook out. And so this week, I need you to take the kids when you're done with work and go take them to the library every afternoon this week. And I'm going to sit here and knock this thing out. And this week we have friends parked right next to us. And so we're going to say, forget it on the homeschooling, and we're going to go to every science museum and learn that way this week. And then the next week we're going to go boondock in the middle of nowhere. We're going to knock out a ton of schoolwork. We're going to rest. We might take a couple of lazy hikes, but we're going to find ourselves back to center in that way. And so I feel like for me, the way I picture it is like we're sort of spinning around this circle, this center of where I want to keep ending up with everything that we're juggling. And sometimes we're way off center this way, and I am okay with that because I know that it's not going to last. And sometimes I need to push us back to center by focusing on something else. And I think for me, it's two parts. One is like a deep acceptance of the fact that it's okay to be unbalanced temporarily. And I feel like people get really anxious about that. Like, yeah, I didn't get enough school done this week. It's never going to happen. And I'm a terrible homeschool mom. And like, we're way behind. And people get very anxious about that. And I feel like for me, I have to just like have deep acceptance about the fact that like, maybe this is the week where socializing is truly more important. And that's okay. That we will find our way back. We will get everything done. And when I want to launch a new product, like a new ebook, I sent my husband and my kids to the library in Alaska every afternoon for like 10 days. It's like, you got to get out. I need some dedicated writing time. Like, go. And I have the real privilege of having a super supportive partner that helps me do that. But I don't think it's possible to have all the things perfectly juggled every day. I'm not sure it's realistic.
Can you please share with the audience where they can connect with you online and read your blog and buy all of the ebooks and guides and stuff that you have?
Yes, please come connect with me on Instagram. I'm at Kate O'Phelan. My last name is Ophalen. It's kind of weird to spell, but I spell it because my blog is also up at ophalenadventures.com, and you can find everything. I've blogged a ton about Alaska, blogged a ton about learning to boondock, blog about all the places that we go. I've shared a bunch of our favorite boondocking spots, things we like to do, our favorite hikes, all that kind of stuff. And you can check out my ebooks about learning to boondock and RVing Alaska. And I'm hoping to have one come out soon about planning an RV renovation as well. So come find me there.
Nice. Okay. We will do it. All right, Kate, whenever you think back to the version of yourself before your full-time travel life, when you lived in Brooklyn, and when you compare that to the version of you today, you're a travel mom and a content creator and all these things going on, what has changed?
I feel like at the core of myself, not a lot has changed. I still care about the same things. I still care about making the world a better place. I still care about being a really good mother. I still value adventures. I value seeing new things, trying new things, meeting new people. All that stuff at the center is the same, but I feel like so much of the outside stuff is different. I find adventures more outdoors than I used to. I feel like I've developed a deep comfort within myself that I can try things that are way, way outside of my comfort zone, like learning to drive a truck and trailer. That I know that because I've stretched myself so much that I have a confidence in myself that I am capable of learning really hard new things. And I feel like maybe the biggest change is that I definitely feel more relaxed. I feel less frenetic than I did when I was a city person. I get a lot of nervous system regulation from being outside in these beautiful places, from letting the sun hit my face, from walking on these hikes and holding my kids' hands. And that for me was missing a bit in city life, was that it's easy to get wrapped up in the fast-pacedness of it all. And that has been a real gift, to slow down, work on regulating my nervous system when it feels like it needs it, and to just trust that no matter where our journey takes us moving forward from this, because I honestly don't know, like, we are a team and we can do this.
Whew, that was good. I love it. Well, thank you, Kate, for inspiring us all and for being on the show today. And I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you.
It was so fun
Me
getting
too.
to know you.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. All right. I will see you on the road. All right, my friends. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode and for being my favorite part of RV life. If you could please like and subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on, that would be awesome. And listen, if you want to have conversations like I had on this episode with your fellow RV women, head to rvqueenspodcast.com/community and choose your RV Queen Circle today. All right, guys, I'll see you next week, or hopefully I will see you on the road.